Have you ever had a desire to write a book? Or maybe you know somebody that should write a book. We're going to talk about that and more on the next edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
And welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
My name is Steve Lacey.
And I'm Phil Thompson, and we have a very special guest today on our podcast. In fact, you will probably recognize his voice because Adam Colwell and I go way back, and he actually has done the voiceover for our podcast intro. And we have him today because not only has he had a lot of history in broadcasting, with me in other places, but now he has his own company, had it for several years, called Adam Colwell's Writeworks, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that all means. So, Adam, it's nice to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Phil and Steve. I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you here, and you tell us a little bit about what you do, because this, I think, is something that would interest a lot of the people listening to this podcast. We have a variety of churches, all sorts of different backgrounds, cultures. We have volunteers, leaders, pastors, obviously, and I gave that little tease about writing a book because that's a lot of what you do.
It is indeed. Adam Colwell's Writeworks started about 5 years ago, and we began by providing content to generally Christian nonprofit ministries, devotionals, teaching articles, and things like that. And over the years, the business grew to where it began publishing books, and me using my book editing and ghostwriting skills to do that. In 2012, we launched our first publishing imprint, and since then we have printed 3 books through that publishing imprint, and currently have 6 books in production right now, some of which will be done by the end of 2015, others in 2016.
Wow. So you said a production imprint. What does that mean?
A publishing imprint basically means that I help and provide the means by which authors can go ahead and publish their books through self-publishing through my company.
So, and again, there's times I've thought about writing a book. My wife has actually thought about writing a book. Of course, we've got one of our.
You have written a book.
Actually, I have wrote a
Phil.
book, haven't I? I forgot about that.
You forgot your book.
And I assisted with that.
That's right.
Yes.
You did. I forgot all
Do
about
we need
that.
to remind you of this?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, I keep forgetting
author.
the money, the royalties just roll in so much that I've forgotten.
You did get a big check recently.
I did. I was 12 cents. The book is what's the name of the book?
It was a book on
streaming video,
live streaming church in an hour.
Yeah, streaming video in 1 hour
Yes.
or something. It's available on Amazon.
Yes.
I don't remember the title.
You see, in a little bit, I'll talk about the importance of authors promoting their books, and we're hoping that Phil will listen in and catch some of the pointers there.
All right. So anyhow, I think this is interesting because people listening here, your pastor may have a great story. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you're a pastor, and you've got a great story, and you thought, I really should write a book. First of all, let me point people to your website right off the bat.
Thank you.
And what is it? Tell us
it's AdamColwellWriteworks.com. It's a big, long name, but if you Google Adam Colwell, Colwell, my website will come up top of the list on Google.
Okay. Don't you get a guy from Ireland or something if you're not
if you go a few down down the list. Yeah, I'm number 1 now. But if you go a few down the list, there is a gentleman in Scotland or Ireland, one or the other, selling various beer products.
Oh, okay.
But that's not me.
We'll cover that later. So Adam Colwell Writeworks. So when we say Writeworks, it's right as in WRIT.
Correct.
Writeworks. Okay. So all right. So you help others passionately share their stories.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly does that mean, and how? Tell us how that really relates to church pastors.
Well, we help everyone, and you mentioned earlier, people in the church, your wife, and so on. We help everyone from aspiring writers, beginning writers, to professional writers. Be sure to share their story through the book editing, the ghostwriting, the publishing, the platform development that's necessary to promote your book, and writer coaching as well. And we've got a proven system of one-on-one interaction that allows us to do that work, and it helps writers achieve something more than they could by themselves. So we then help them to complete the manuscript, publish the book, promote the book, and then sell the book primarily through their website and through the work of their platform, generally as a speaker. Now, church pastors definitely have stories to tell. Now, sometimes it's a specific teaching focus, and we'll talk about that a little bit. It could be a teaching series that they've done that they feel very passionate about, but it could also be a personal story from your life. One of the most wonderful things that you can do as a pastor is share some of the struggles that you have had, whether it's in ministry or in your personal life, because that makes you very real to people.
Right.
So those stories can be quite powerful, and I'll share examples of one a little bit later on. But whatever it is, whether it's a teaching focus or a personal story, I help them put that into book form.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about one of those books. There's a fellow who's a local guy here in Tucson. His name is David Drum, and I've known David a little bit over the years, and he's also part of another organization here in town. But and the book you did for him is now in its second printing.
Correct.
And by the way, what does that mean, second printing? That means he sold 2 books? What does that mean?
No, it means that the authors will pick whatever number of books they would like to print on the first printing. And it could be as few as 300 or as many as 1,500, depending on your goals and what you want to do. So in David's case, he printed 1,500 copies on the first printing, distributed and sold all of those, and then at that point decided to do a second printing. So he did another 1,500 books to be able to market and sell, and we're currently in production on a Spanish language version of the book as well, due to demand from the Mexican American community and Spanish speaking churches to be able to take his message of city transformation and apply it to their church.
So tell us kind of the nuts and bolts on this thing. Okay, so how did David, basically, how did it come about when he told you what he was passionate about? How did this thing turn into a manuscript?
Well, he approached me about his idea for the book about the same time that I was launching the publishing imprint. So the timing was really perfect for both of us, and we set to work on the project then. He did a series of messages on John 17 and Jesus' prayer for unity. That's in John 17 that we're all pretty much familiar with. But he has kind of a twist on it. The true story, the true purpose behind Jesus' prayer for unity. So he combines that with Paul's analogy about the body of Christ from 1 Corinthians, and kind of gives a powerful direction on how the body of Christ is supposed to operate in every city as a citywide church, bringing citywide transformation. So he takes a look at 5 different levels of unity, kind of each building on the next one, and then gives practical means for ways that people can fulfill Jesus' prayer for unity and Paul's analogy in their church and in their city. And then he concludes it with a case study of how the organization that he's working with now for Tucson is achieving that through his work as the domain director for the church domain for Tucson.
Right. So he had a unique idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, there's just a quick question. You mentioned he's already sold 1,500 of those books. I guess, are you going to talk a little bit about, has that gone really well for him? What was his key to getting those books sold? And
yeah, he had a good platform going in, and by platform I mean people of influence that he has already spoken to or worked with that would be interested in his book. And so he had a good platform of individuals going in, and that was certainly helpful. But he goes out and he speaks. In addition to his work with the church domain with Tucson, he goes out and he speaks, and he basically shares this message to churches throughout Tucson and anywhere else where they might like to have him go. And when he does, then of course he takes the books along, sets up his book table in the back, and sells the books that way. And that is still, as old-fashioned as it sounds, the most effective way as an author for you to sell books, is to have your own personal events where you are presenting your message, your ministry as a speaker, and then being able to have the books available to people. And there's different strategies that you can employ to take advantage of those situations, but that's still the best way to go ahead and sell a book. And there's many reasons why for that we'll go into.
Yeah. We've got a common friend, I think, and you may know him as well, at Delft, that I uses that same approach.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
At our neighboring Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's spoken at our church, and then it was interesting. He had a booth set up in the foyer. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, and sold some books. Sold quite a few books. I was really
remember
surprised when people were telling me how many books he sold there.
Well,
like, wow.
and the trick is if you're a speaker and you do a really good job, what you're speaking, even if the people have already purchased a book in advance, or perhaps even as part of your speaking platform, you decided, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to this church for a specific fee. Embedded in that fee to come to the church is a free copy of the book, but really you're including the cost of the book at full price in that fee. Right. And so you go ahead and pre-distribute books. Those same people who've already got a book in their hand will buy other books at the event if you kind of hit a home run when you go and do your speaking.
I kind of got the message that people really connected with him. They didn't know anything about him before he showed up, and then he taught that Sunday, and people really connected with him and thought, I really like this guy. I'm going to go find out. I want some more of what he has to offer. And they buy the book.
Absolutely. And usually you try to put the book together in such a way to where you're giving them plenty of good takeaway content, but you're not giving them everything.
Yeah. Well, and he actually, when Ed spoke, he didn't really promote the book. I mean, I don't know what topic he talked on, if it was completely related. It probably had something to do with the book, so it was a tie-in. But it wasn't like he spoke for an hour saying, please buy my book or anything. It was just
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to talk about the topic of the book to sell the book.
Right.
Again, if people
I think just relate
to you, then they're going to want to know more.
Right.
So in David Drum's case in the book, you guys did. I'm kind of throwing this out here because there's all sorts of different ideas. I'm sure people listening going, well, I don't really have a niche. I call it a niche topic that Dave Drum had, where he had a different slant on a verse or a teaching. I think of people, like famous Rick Warren, the purpose-driven church and all that stuff. That's kind of but there's also people that have maybe a personal experience that they want to write about. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, okay, here's my different idea on this scripture or my amazing teaching.
No, I mean, usually for people who are not pastors or who are not lay teachers, it's going to be a story about their personal life or a story about family member or something like that. It's going to be more of a memoir approach. Right. But for many pastors, they have, I think, niche topics that they enjoy, niche topics that they know have been effective when they've shared those messages in their church. And those are the ones that we want to discover and capitalize upon in a book, because that's going to give that person a unique approach. It may still be a purpose-driven life approach, but you don't have to call it that and try to copy what Rick Warren so successfully did in order to be able to put out a book that has your distinctive voice and message to it.
Yeah. So how long did it take? Let's just take this one book, and you've done a couple now, but let's just take this book that David Drum had. How long did the process take from him going, I want to write a book, to here's the book? Mm-hmm. How long did that take?
For the project that David and I did together, 6 months, believe it or not, from start to finish, and that's pretty quick.
That's half the time it took for Phil to write his book.
Well, and like I said, that's pretty quick.
Mine you can read in 1 hour. I'm serious.
But it did take you an year.
The whole idea behind it is,
you can. I'm glad it's coming back to Phil's book, because that's important.
We need to push it. I can't remember the title, but we need to push it. But it's on Amazon. I know that. All right.
Yes, 6 months from start to finish. And in part, that was because he had material already written. And generally, it was written in readable form. There's a difference. Many pastors write in a form to where he's writing the material to be spoken. And that's good for writing it to be spoken, but generally it's going to be repetitive because you need to repeat the same points and so on, and that's not good for written form. So in David's case, he had something that was already pretty well written in readable form, in book form, on the topic, and he had 3 parts to it. I mean, it was already basically kind of a first draft of the manuscript was already written. And so what I was able to do was take that material, do some copy editing on it. In other words, adding illustrations, and illustrations are just stories that can add some context and some texture to some of the points that he's bringing out. I checked the Bible references. I made sure that all the citations from leaders and authors that he quoted in the book were correct. Checked spelling and grammar and so on, and then just made sure it had a storytelling flow. That's generally, for his project, what I made sure to add, was that it had a good storytelling flow, transitions from one point to the next. So we went one chapter at a time, sat down together, reviewed all of my revisions to his work. He made changes to those. He came back with a second draft. I would do a second revision, and we just did that one chapter at a time, systematic process, meeting on a weekly basis. And in 6 months, we had ourselves a manuscript finished and ready to go.
So I'm sure there's people listening right now going, okay, I don't have the time to do this because I'm pastoring a church, and you might be, a lot of our customers have, churches that the pastor is having to do a lot of the work. It's not a large staff, maybe. And so what do you tell somebody, if somebody has this desire to write a book, but yet they're thinking, okay, I just don't have the time or energy to do this. Give us a little bit of a, I don't know if I want to call sales pitch, but tell us why it's important, and how they can deal with that whole obstacle in their brain going, I just could never do that.
Well, sure. I think if you're going to decide to work on a book project, you need to do that from the standpoint that this message, this message that you want to share is so deep within you. It's just something that you have to get out to the public. It's something that you're very passionate about. If it doesn't fit that category, it's going to be really hard for you to buckle down and do the work necessary over a 12-month period, ideally, to get a book finished. So, first and foremost, you've got to have that message burning within you that I've just got to get this out to more people than are in my congregation. But assuming that is the case, then that's where I come alongside. I'm able to work with the person so that with a minimal time investment from the pastor, and it could be no more than 90 minutes a week that we would spend together on the manuscript itself.
That was my next question.
Well, I was just jumping ahead. So you've got this book that's done. What's the next step for getting it into print? And
going ahead a little bit then. Once the book is done, then there's several steps to follow. First and foremost, even while the manuscript is being completed, you want to go ahead and begin the work, and this is something that, again, WriteWorks helps all the authors do, is to launch a website that is focused solely on the book and on the platform of your speaking ministry. In other words, as a church pastor, it's very easy to think, well, I'll just add a page to my church website. And we recommend that you don't do that, because you want to have a very distinctive brand for your book and for your speaking platform. And so it requires a separate website. And that website needs to be equipped with the ability to do a weekly blog, to do all of your social media interaction, to sell the book on your website, which is very key. And basically be a good, simple, professional-looking website, but be equipped to do all of those things and set you apart. At the same time that you're creating the website, we sit down together and we start to develop a marketing plan as to, who your target audiences are. We'll already have that determined because we've been working on the book with that in mind. Who those target audiences are, how you want to go about reaching them. Do you really want to go after speaking engagements? And if so, how many per month? How many per month do you feel like you can do? And we set that as a target. We figure out what organizations would be good, whether denominational or otherwise, that could partner with you to help promote the book. And we come up with a marketing plan that includes those elements, plus training for the pastor or the author to do a really good weekly blog that is very specifically written and focused to be able to generate good search engine traffic and so on for your topic that you're presenting, and the topic, of course, being married to the topic of the book. And all of that work begins even before we get to the point to where we're printing the book. Now, on the production side, once a manuscript is completed, step number one then is to go ahead and get the book cover design and any graphics or photos that you're having inside the book completed. And that's usually about a 2-week to 4-week period to get that done. And we have graphic designers who do that work on behalf of the author. Then after that, it's a process of getting it typeset. Typesetting is where it's basically put from manuscript form in a Word document to book form with pages and all the layout that you see in a book. That typically takes about a 4-week period. And so the typesetting needs to be done. Once the typesetting is done, the book cover graphics are done, the inside graphics are done, then all of that is delivered to a book printer. And then the book printer is able to get that done in about 2 to 3 weeks at the quantity desired.
Right.
And so, again, it's another 2 to 3 months process after the manuscript is done, at most, to go ahead and get the book printed and ready to go.
And so it sounds like it's not a case of build it and they will come, right? You talked about the whole marketing effort. And, a lot of people may think, oh, I published my book, I get it out there, and now everyone's just going to start buying out my book. But that's...
As Phil has learned from his book experience, that's simply not the case.
Yes.
It is not a case of build it and they will come.
The work begins when you finish the...
Absolutely. The work is just beginning when you finish. And I make sure that authors understand that up front because I want them to go into the project with, obviously, realistic expectations. And it's also a good measure at that point of how serious are they about this project, because once they learn the amount of work that is required after the book is published to be able to promote and sell the book, and generally on average, it could be 10 to 15 hours a week of marketing work, including going out and doing your speaking engagements and so on. That's intimidating to some people, and they may decide, well, okay, it may not be worth my effort, and I would rather have someone not publish a book that is just going to sit there and languish and die. I'd rather have someone publish a book and know in advance the work that's going to be required to go ahead and sell it.
Have you seen instances where it's either been really successful in those efforts, or you hear about these books that just they came out of the blue from somebody you've never heard of, and they're selling tons and tons of those? Is there some key, or is it just, I don't know? Have you seen some common threads between some of them that have gone really well, or is that just out of the norm?
It is out of the norm.
Okay.
I think the most recent example is, what was the name of the book that was self-published, and I'm not going to remember the title of it now.
What's it about? What was it about?
Cabin in the Woods, I think. Well, shoot, I'm not going to remember.
Okay.
But there are, and they may come to my mind here in a bit, but there are some examples where a book is self-published like that. It gains attention in some way that's unique,
right.
And then a traditional publisher such as Zondervan will come.
Yeah, Oprah found it obscurely, and then she promoted it.
But those are generally the exception to the rule.
Yeah,
because again, as an author, you want to publish your book not as the way to, okay, I'm going to publish this book and we're going to sell 1 million copies and I'm going to retire on this. Well, even for the book authors that you go to a Target or a Walmart and you see all their names on that shelf, that's not even the true reality for them. As you can tell, they're still writing books over and over and over because they've got to keep feeding the beast to be able to do that. So when you're a pastor or an author who is publishing a book, you want to be doing it because you've got a specific ministry tied to it that the book will complement. And that the book will serve that ministry's purposes. Yes, you will sell copies and you will be able to be successful in that way, but you don't want to rely on the book alone to be, what you are and what you present to the public.
So let me jump. We're running out of time here. Let me talk a little bit about the online thing, because my book is on Amazon. Is Dave Drum's book, or is anybody you're working with, have they put their book online?
All of their books are online. David's is Jesus: A Surprising Strategy. That one is online.
Hey, can they get it on Amazon?
And they can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
Dr. Jeffrey Allen Love's book, Life Palette, is on Amazon.
Okay.
And Wendy Lynn Larson's book, My Climb, the third book on my publishing imprint, is online. But here's the catch. You have to be on Amazon to be considered legit. And your ebook needs to be on there and so on. But Amazon takes a pretty penny from every sale.
They do.
Usually it's a 55 to 60% cut of every sale of your book. If you're selling an ebook at $4.99, well, do the math. You're not getting much back. If you sell your book at $12.99, you're still not getting a whole lot back. And so, while all these authors are available on Amazon, I recommend to them and to those that they are marketing the book to sell it, to instead have it be purchased either through an event, a speaking event, or at their website, because then the author is going to keep 100% of that sale plus shipping and handling. And that is the only way that an author can successfully take care of the upfront costs of publishing and marketing a book to be able to break even and make a profit on the project. And so you have to be on Amazon because it's a legitimacy issue.
Right.
But you never want to point somebody to Amazon to have them sell or have them buy your book at Amazon, because you're just not going to make as much money as you would if you have them buy the book through your website.
Okay, so if people want to buy Streaming Video for Churches in 1 Hour by Phil Thompson,
Yes.
don't go to Amazon where it's at and where you can easily get it. Just send me an email, phil@StreamingChurch.tv.
Well, see, what we didn't do with you then is we didn't create that author website I was talking about, where it would be easy, just as easy as Amazon, if not easier, to go buy your book. So,
so
flawed marketing there.
I know, we screwed up. All right, so quickly here. So you got to have. So if you're going to write a book, passion, got to have a burning passion to get your message out.
Yes.
Whatever it might be. You're going to have to take the time. It's a process. It could take 6 months to a year. See, it took over a year. You're going to have to spend it probably in the process of getting this thing out. It's going to be at least 90 minutes a week that you would have to set aside.
Sure.
90 minutes a week,
Sure.
60 to 60 minutes to maybe 2 hours a week.
Yeah, and that's an in-person appointment.
And you got to have to be committed to doing that stuff. Now, here's the bottom line. What's it going to cost? I mean, so you don't have to give me your exact numbers, because I know it's going to fluctuate a little bit.
Right.
But I mean, what's it cost? What would it cost somebody like David Drum or Jeffrey Allen Love or to use your services? And you're pretty reasonable. And there's other people out there, obviously. Bottom line.
Yeah. Well, to do the editing and the ghostwriting, or a little bit of both. And again, the ghostwriting is where I'm going ahead and I'm writing the book as though I were you and filling in that content. Editing is where I'm taking your content and doing a revision on it. In some projects, you do a little bit of both. That's $350 a month for 12 months. So it's a $4,200 investment to go ahead and get the book manuscript ready. Then at that point, you've got additional costs depending on those you have in your circle of influence that might be able to help you with some of these things as well. But to do the website, to begin to do your social media and to manage your social media and your blog, to do the publishing and the typesetting and so on. Again, the publishing is going to vary depending on the quantity that you choose.
Right.
The costs for the graphic design of the book cover and for the typesetting are pretty much standard. They don't fluctuate. The cover design is going to be about $500, and then the typesetting is going to be $1,000. So again, you go into it knowing that you're looking at a $7,500 to maybe even up to a $10,000 investment, depending upon the other means that you have available to you to be able to properly launch your book.
Okay. All right.
And then many of those, they recoup those costs as they sell the books, right?
Correct. Yeah, Dave recouped his costs, most of his costs, as a result of the first printing, before the first printing was over.
Nice.
And again, it all depends on how you sell it and being successful at selling it at full price versus a
Right.
discounted price or an Amazon price.
All right. So there's it's not just as Steve mentioned earlier, write it and they will come. You're going to have to put some effort and work into it. So we're out of time here. So a couple things. One is, how can people get a hold of you if they have questions? If, maybe you could just give some advice. How do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Google my name, Adam Colwell, AdamColwell. Go to AdamColwellWriteWorks.com, go to my contact page, and contact me through there. And I offer a free consultation appointment on your project where we'll sit down for 1 to 2 hours and talk about the project.
Okay. And you could even do that online.
Yes, absolutely, or on the phone.
Okay. All right. So you can also get a hold of us. If you want to get a hold of Adam, just send us an email, support@StreamingChurch.tv, and we'll certainly help you. And we're out of time. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Thank
you.
you.
It's always good to see you. So we're available on iTunes, this Church Solutions podcast. If you haven't checked out us on iTunes, you might be listening to us on a different platform right now. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Look for Church Solutions Podcast. Give us a review. You can also find us on newmediaministries.tv. You're really kind of get the YouTube version. We put this also on YouTube, the audio only. And so you can look for StreamingChurch.tv and catch us there. You can always go to one of our websites, StreamingChurch.tv, and click the resources. And we didn't say at the very beginning of this podcast who we are, but we're assuming that most of you, if you're listening, know who we are. We help churches use tech to help them and advance their cause. So we have mobile apps, we have streaming video, we have church management systems and websites and all that stuff.
We do.
So we're all there. We're there to help you as a church. We really are. It's our passion as well. And all right, we're out of time. I'm Phil Thompson. He's Steve Lacey. We've just talked to Adam Colwell. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next week on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Have a great day.